In today's tutorial, we're going to look at creating a numbered guessing game where the user can slide and make a guess, say at 50, click on guess, too high, then go to say 25. If they're too high again, let's go down to 10, too high, say 0, too low, let's go to 2, too low, let's go to 8, winner winner chicken dinner. So we're going to have a look at creating this game. So I hope you find some useful things in this tutorial. Remember, if you do, give it a like and subscribe. Just helps the channel keep going. And let's get underway. First thing we're going to do is open Xcode, and we're going to create a new Xcode project. We're going to select iOS, and also we're going to create an app and going to click on next. We need to give it a product name. So in this case here, we're going to call this number_guess. And you need to have a team, you need to have an organization, always fine if you don't have an organization, last name, first name. We're going to use an interface of Storyboard, and then language is Swift. So you need to make sure rather than Swift UI that you select Storyboard for this one. It doesn't matter if you've got these ticked or unticked, but I've got include tests, and then click on next. It's going to ask you where you want to save it. Just click on where you want to do it and create a folder for that when you hit on create. It loads in. The first thing we want to do in the top left hand corner is click on main. This will bring up our main storyboard. At the moment, up the very top, we're working on an iPod. We want to change that, and I'm going to put you need to match these up. So you need to pick an iPhone. I'm going to pick an iPhone 13 Max, Pro Max. And also down the bottom, I'm going to tell it I want a design for that as well. So I'm selecting that down the bottom here as well. So now they both match up, so when we render and actually test it in the simulator, it'll be the same layout. The other reason for selecting this is the most common large screen format. If you've got a computer that doesn't have a lot of RAM or processing power, I suggest that you use something like the iPhone 8. So just dial it back down a little bit and use the iPhone 8 Plus, sorry. So use that one instead, and also down the bottom, and that will create a perfectly good app, but will not strain your computer. Now, once we've done that, we need to create the correct orientation for the stage. At the moment, it's in a portrait mode, and we would like to create this one in landscape mode. So down the bottom left-hand corner, you can click on the orientation, which will then roll it left. What we want to do now is, first of all, place a title. So a title needs to sit at the top, and I'm going to use a graphic to put that in. So I'm going to go in and select a image view. So the image view is like a container that I can put a graphic in. I'm just going to place that, make sure it doesn't go in the out of bounds area, and just put it there. Now to create a graphic, I suggest using an application for it or a website. One of my favorite ones at the moment is Flaming Text. You can get this at www.11.flamingtext.com. You can see all the different types of sort of text you can get here. Go through to about page 7, and you'll find some pretty cool looking ones as you go through them. If you've got time, explore them, find out which ones you like, what you don't like, but I wanted to use this one here. So this street sports one's a pretty good one, and you can see there's different fonts down the bottom here, and I'm going to use this one on the right hand side here. You can see the text really clearly. If you want to adjust it more, you can adjust the font down the bottom. You can change its size and things like that. And we're going to give it a name. I'm just going to call this number guess. And this will generate a PNG for us on a transparent background. If we want to change the color of it, you can come in here and adjust the color, and that'll adjust the text there. There's all sorts of effects you can do as well. It's up to you how you want to do that, and images. You can explore this program in your own time. Click on next. And when you're happy with it, you'll see the image come up here. You can then click on download. Now, once it downloads, I'm going to place this on my desktop. And then what I want to do is rename that file. Now, the main reason for renaming it is so that I've got a graphic I can then import. So I'm just going to call this number guess title. Now you'll see this in a moment when I import it into the application. So here we are back at the application. I'm going to click on assets, and I'm just going to drag that file in from my desktop. And you can see it come in. It's called number guess title. And I'm just going to let it go here. You can see it's coming in the smallest form, and you got 1, 2, 3, and you can have 3 different sizes, etc. But at the moment I just need that. When I head back to main, I can then select the image box and head up on image view, and then head up to the right hand corner and select the image from the pull down list, and you can see the number guest title. Now I can adjust this to be the size I would like it. So that's scalable, and I can move it into position, and at the moment I'll just move it down just a little. That's okay, and that'll do. So I now have my title on my screen, and I haven't had to do a great deal of work for that. So let's just check this by hitting play up in the top left and opening up our simulator to have a look at this program in action. You can see at the moment it's loading. Now I'm not going to bother about changing the orientation. All I'm going to do is click in the top left hand corner, and you'll see the orientation automatically come into play. Now it does take some time for the app to load up, especially when it's an iPhone Pro 13 or 13 Pro Max, because of the number of pixels, etc. But you can see we have an effective title on screen, and I'm just going to move that off to the side. And when you want to stop the program, just click stop here, and that will stop the simulation. Okay, if you ever get lost and other things come up, if you click on this little folder here, it brings you back to this point, and then you can click on main to actually see this part here. Okay, now we want to guess by using a slider. So we're going to click on the add, and we're going to head down, and we're going to find slider. Here it is here, and we're going to place this on the stage. I'm then going to stretch it out to the size that I would like it. So this is what I would visually like. Up in the top right hand corner in the properties, you can see there's got a value of 0.5. That 0.5 is the step that each of these slider marks will have. So it will go up in half steps, like 1, 1.5. I want to change that to 1. So it goes up in whole steps. So it'll be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Not 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5. You've got a minimum. At the moment it is 0. And the maximum is actually set to 1. So it's either 0 or 1. So what I want to do is change that 1 to 100. Now later on you can change any of these properties via code, but at the moment we're just going to set it from 0 to 100. So this slider now will go from 0 to 100 in increments of 1. So once the slider's in there, I need to actually add some labels so I can give the user some information about what is occurring. So let's put some labels in. Now labels are different to text boxes because labels are only text on screen, and we normally don't adjust labels. So in other words, the text we put in there, like 0, and we can change its font size and color. So I'm just going to make this a little bit more dramatic by turning it red, and I'm going to change the text size. It's still system 17, but I want to increase this to 25 and click done. And the font now is 25, and I'm going to add another one, label, but this time to the other side, line it up, but this time this is going to be a 100. Once again, I'm going to change the color to a red, and its system size 25, and you can see the 100. So these share the same properties, but they're pure labels. They're not going to change. In the middle, I want to show the value of the slider. So I need to have something that changes. If I want an object to change and it's going to hold text, the best thing to put in there is actually a text field. So drag that out, find center, and line that up and just let it go. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger and center that a little more. And then I'm going to put some text in there, make a guess. And I'm just going to change the default color. If you go all the way to the bottom, you'll see custom. When you click on custom, it'll open up a little palette. Click on the wheel, just lighten that up, and you can go through and find whatever color you would like to make. Make it a little darker, and then just click on the dot, and you can see that the text is now that color. I would like to center it, also like to adjust it, and I'm going to turn that into 25 as well. And click on done. So now we have some text on screen. We have a 0 top, we've got all that. Now all I need is a button to make a guess. So that way, when the user clicks on that, it will then have a look at the value of the slider and look at say a random number and see if they're the same. So let's put the event trigger on, which is a button. There's several different buttons. I'm just going to use the filled button at the moment and drop that into position. I'm also going to make that a little bit bigger and move it back into position. And I'm going to change the name to guess. And if we want to change the color, so say the background of the button, we can come in here and select a color. So these are ones I've used before. So I'm going to just use a sort of a light blue color. And remember, if you've got a light background, it's a good idea to have a dark foreground. So I'm just going to pick something like black at the moment for the foreground. Now, once we change the name, we need to constrain the size of this text box so it doesn't snap back to smaller. So down the bottom when it's selected, there's this little crosshair here for add new constraint. And I want to add the width and the height for this text box and click add. And I need to do the same for make a guess. So select that and also go width and height. And that'll make sure that those two containers hold the same information. Now to put the rest of the constraints in, because I haven't been doing them individually as I went along, I'm just going to go Command A and select all the objects that are on the stage, all the elements. And then I'm just going to go down the bottom right hand corner, select the A and go add the missing constraints. This way they're all added. The objects still have their constraints, but also the positioning is also mapped out for us automatically. So let's have a look at this in our simulator. Click on play. There you go. Now we can see the finished user interface. I can move the slider and now we can actually make it interactive. At the moment we have an output area. We've got our input coming from the slider and we have a button. So the first thing you do, so the next part or part 2, remember if you like this video, give it a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Give it a thumbs up as well to help it get out there. What we have to do in the second part is join the elements to our code, and so we have to make some outlets between the GUI and the coding area. So let's get underway for that. To do that, we need to go to our assistant. So I'm going to click on the 3 lines up here and click on assistant. Sometimes if you've got an older version, you've got the little Venn diagram if you click on that. So in our code, this is our main program here. This is after the program has loaded. So just between the class and the override, just press enter a couple of times. We're going to put some developer comments in here. These are for developers. The computer won't run it. So therefore we can read it as a developer, but the computer won't try to execute them. Now we need to put some little areas in. So the first one's going to be outlets. Now outlets allow us to join our user interface to our code. So anything that we need to interact with, it might be an output area, an input area like the slider, or a button, a call to action, all of those need an outlet. The next one we need to put in is global variables. These are variables that can be seen by any function. So if we want to write some code and have a variable like the random number, we can declare it here and all the other functions will see this. So be very considerate when using global variables. The last section is functions. And this is where we can put all our functions. So step 1 is create the outlets. To do that, click an object such as make a guess, hold down the control, click and drag. You'll see this little interaction window come up. Insert action outlet. We want to make an outlet, so I'm just going to release that. It's an outlet at the top, give it a name. Because this is a text box, we're going to refer it as txt, and then we're going to put output. So this is where we're going to output all our information. So that we will talk to this box. The box's name is now txt output, and we go connect. Now that's just joined us together. I'm just going to close this panel down on the right hand side by just clicking on that. So it's a little bit wider. Now the next outlet we need is the slider bar, which is this one here. Once again, same thing, hold down control, click, drag, come up and release. You can see outlet, what do we want to call it? SLD, which is short for slider, user guess. So this is where we're going to get what the user thinks they're guessing. Notice there's a blank line between those. I'm just going to delete that so they move up next to each other. Press enter on line 15 just to give me that little bit extra space. Last one is the button. The idea of the button is when I click this, it takes their guess from the slider and checks with the random number that's generated to see if those numbers are the same. So let's create an outlet for that. Once again, control, click, drag, line 15, give it a name. So this is BTN, which is short for button, and we'll call this guess. Okay, that's our outlets created. There are no other elements on the GUI or the user interface that I need to interact with. Therefore, I don't need any more outlets. We need now to create a function. So let's start with the easiest thing. When I move the slider, I want to see what the number is in this box here. Now remember, this box is called txt output. So I want to take the value of the slider and put it into this text box. To do that, first of all, I need to make a function for the slider. So I'm going to hold down Control, click the slider once again, and come down the bottom here. And this time when I release, you see there's an action. So that's a little bit different to an outlet. Outlets are up the top. The action means if something happens, is there an event trigger which actions this, run this function, and I need to give it a name. So I can call it SLD once again, user guess. So the slider user guessed. So if anything happens to this, I'll want it to action something. Between the open brace and the closed brace is where our code goes. And as I said before, I want to change the text that is in this text box to show the value that I'm sliding up and down. So to do that, I need to talk to that text box. I'm going to say that txt output, and of this text box in particular, I want to talk to the text part of it. So I want to go dot text is equal to, now I want to get the value of the slider bar. Now this can be a little bit confusing, but we need to talk to the slider bar. So SLD, slider user guessed, which is the outlet up here. And in particular, I want to get the value. So I want the value of that slider. So whatever that dot is on, I want it to be put into the text box, or the text part of this text box. Now you notice there's an error here, and when we click on that, it talks assigned to value text is a method, cannot assign value text float to a text range or string. When we bring the value from the slider, it's actually coming back as a number, and what we need to do is turn that to a string. So we need to typecast it. So we're going to go string, and then we're going to change the value. Now, if we read it right to left, it's a little bit easier. So I'm just going to make this just that little bit smaller so it sits nicer on the screen. So take the value of the slider guess, turn it to a string, and put it into the text box. Now you notice the error is gone. So let's have a look at that in action. So let's run our program. And because I didn't stop it before, it's gone, do you want to replace the existing program? I've gone yes. So that will now load up. Now, as I move this, the event trigger is when I move it. And you notice as I move the slider, it goes all the way from 0 all the way to 100. But it's giving me a real number. You can see it's got decimal points. So it has a floating decimal point. So it's also known as a float. So let's just stop the program now. Now, to stop it from being real number, we can do two things. We can either round it, or we can typecast it again and say be an integer, which is an int. So the real number, which is value, so it's 1 point something something something, turn it to an integer. So it will actually turn it to 1. So if it's 1.1, it turns it to 1. Then turn that integer into a string. Then take that string and put it in the text part of txt output. This box here is called txt output. Let's have a look at the result now. As I move the slider, we now have whole numbers. It goes from 0 all the way up to 100. So that's working now. All right. Now, in a program, we've got to make a guess and guess a magical number. We need to declare what that magical number is. So we're going to use the command let, which will create a variable for us. We're going to let, and we're going to put I, number to guess. So I stands for integer, so it's going to be a whole number. Number to guess, which is a variable name. And that's going to be equal to, and we're going to have an integer. but we're also going to have a random. So I want to have a random integer that is in a range of 0 to 100. Let's just click out of there. So in a range of 0 to 100, get a random number that's an integer. So it'd be a whole number between 0 and 100, and store that in iNumberToGuess. So that's what's occurring in that program there. So when the program fires up, it selects our random number. If we get time in the video, we might actually add a reset button, so we can actually roll this again off a button. Now, once we've done that, we now need to check. So if the user moves it to a point and then they go click the button, now that button needs to be guessed, and it's sort of changed its name. So let's just have a quick little look here and go back up here and change that back to guess. All right, so we can then go guess. So when they click on the guess button, I want to have a look at the random number that's generated and see if it's the same as the slider value. So let's go write that in some code. So first of all, I need to make a function. So hold down Control, click, and this is going to be an event trigger. Now I need to give it a name. So it's going to be btn guess. And in here, we now want to check those two elements. Now to do a check, we need to use an if statement. And what we're going to say, if iNumberToGuess is equal, so if it is the same as, and let's take the slider integer. So if it is the same as the value of the slider as an integer, then I'll want to do something. So what do I want to do? Well, I actually want to talk to this text box again and tell them that they've won. Because if that slider dot is on the same as the random number, then they've won. So we want to go txt output.text, and you can put winner winner. And you can put whatever comment you like in there. So if we get them right, so the slider is exactly on that random numbers that's been generated here, they have won. But we also need to check to see if they're different, because they've only got 1 in 100 to get it the first time. So let's just add an else statement in here and say, well, what if else it's not the same? Well, if the number to guess is greater than the number. So the number to guess is greater than the number that they asked for, then it's going to be too low. So I need to make another comment, and this time rather than saying winner winner, I need to tell them that, hey, the number that you want to guess is greater than the number you put in, therefore they are too low. So I'm just going to copy this down, paste it, and just change this to too low. Now the other good thing though, if it's not too low, then they have to be too high. So therefore, let's go through the logic of this and see if it's all okay. So if the number to guess is equal to the slider value, then txt winner winner chicken dinner. Else, we're missing the if statement here. If the number to guess is greater than the integer, then txt output too low because the number is greater than. So if the number is not correct and the number to guess is not greater than the number they put on the slider, then they must be too high with their guess, which means it's lower. And then you need to make sure that you close off all your little brackets So if you click down here, you notice where they sort of end, that's the start of the function. And this one here lights up at the top. And now when we play our game, we should be able to go to say 50. Click on guess, too high. Let's go to 25. Too high. Let's go to say 10. Too high, or looks like a low number. Let's go to 5. Too high. Too low. Winner, winner. So if you found this tutorial useful, give it a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also have a look around my YouTube channel for other useful Xcode programming tutorials. And I wish you all the best in your future programming endeavors.